Hello, stackers. I'm not quite there yet. There you go. Here's your stacker coming at you from Southern Indiana. Welcome to a stackers gathering, stacking for your preparedness. Good to see everyone. Yeah, I'm running a little late here. I just now got everything turned on in here for getting ready for the bingo stuff tonight here in about an hour or so. So I'm running a little bit behind, but good to see everyone. And Sailor Stacking, thank you already, my friend, for gifting memberships to people out here in the audience. I see you. I see that Elizabeth got membership. Who else got one? Just Elizabeth so far. So Elizabeth is the lucky one because you're the only one that hasn't that wasn't blue or whatever color. You were just gray. So welcome back, Elizabeth. So, asking a question really quick here before I forget, and then we'll get going into stacking your preparedness, get everything situated here. Um, Before we get into it, well, I guess we can wait till 6 o'clock. But Elizabeth, were you going to stick around and play bingo tonight? Because I know you have numbers, and same question to Sailor Stacking. So let me know. Let me know if you want to play or not tonight. I'll turn you blue here in the meantime if you do. Hello, Barbara. Good to see you. Elizabeth. Who else is out here? Purple Winks. Good to see you. Good to see you, Purple. Let's see. Chris G. Hello. Paula Widener. Let's see who else we got out here. And Angie Corwell. Hello, Angie. Good to see you. John Camper. And Natty. And Sherry. Good to see everyone here. I'm going to try to do something different this afternoon. I'm going to try to give you a tour of my food supply using the dice cam. So we're gonna try that here, see how it works. I should be able to maintain a signal, but I probably won't be able to see the chat. And for that matter, I don't know if the audio will even work or not. I guess we'll find out. We shall see. I was wanting to do that for stacking your preparedness this week. I was going to talk about food. And I was going to show you uh, my daughter is actually the green thumb in the family here, so she's been getting things ready out there in the garden. She's got her seedlings started in her code room down here in the basement, and she uh, she has stuff ready and starting to get stuff ready out in the garden. And I was going to give you a tour of both the pantry and of the garden just to give you guys an idea of what you could stack in your preparedness should you need food, which obviously you do to survive, right? But we're still having supply issues. We're still seeing a lot of empty shelves out there, so it's best to have a stock of food. But a pantry is great to have for a short-term need, right? But if it turns into a bad situation, it's going to be better to have like a long-term plan, which means tending gardens and whatnot. So just a little bit more, just another little niche that you want to keep in mind as we start our journey, as you start your journey in stacking for preparedness. Because as I have, and as the motto of this show is, this season is, and probably for all future seasons of Stackers Gathering, is the stacking isn't necessarily about precious metals, isn't all about the shinee'ees. It could be stacking many things in life. So, and that's what we will touch on here on every show, or for the foreseeable future for Stackers Gathering. Let's see. Oh, so Sailor's gifted some memberships out. Thank you, Sailor, for that. Appreciate that. And hope I can make the kitty cam work or the dice cam work. We'll find out here in a bit. If you were wondering where I was last Saturday, my silver squad had a two. Oh, okay. You know what, Paula? I had no idea that was going on last Saturday. A lot of channels do a lot of things on Saturdays, so I'm just one of many. So thank you for everyone coming by, hanging out here for not only this show but Silver Stacker Bingo. I appreciate that. So, all right. So, Sailor, your numbers, you're still good with your numbers. So, I'm going to go ahead and turn you blue. Elizabeth, did you? I don't have numbers, so I don't know how. Oh, I thought you had numbers from last season, Elizabeth. I'll turn Sailor back blue. So, what I did for people that don't have a wrench currently, I think it's just like Sailor and Elizabeth so far this evening. To start with a fresh slate of moderators for this season, I took everyone's wrenches away, and as people come back to the show, for a while, people when they come back for Silver Stacker Bingo, they get their wrench back. It's just allowing me to clean up the moderator list because it can get very long. And I know there are some people that had a wrench that only showed up for like one show last season and they never came back. So I just don't want to. I just don't want to do that. Don't want to have that type of access for people that don't come in here regularly. So now, if you come in regularly, or if you come in to play bingo, I'll give you a wrench, and maybe after a month or so, I'll go through, and if people haven't, or maybe it's 8 weeks, and if people hadn't been back since like one show, then I'll probably take their wrench back away. But I don't want to open up. I don't want to give the keys to the kingdom. Because who knows what would happen there. No, but I don't mind. I don't mind doing it, and I trust that everyone that will do it, that have a wrench will act and behave responsibly. And if you don't, then we'll address it at that point. See, I could have swore, Elizabeth, that you had numbers. Let me check really quick here, and then we'll get talking about stacking here in just a second. I could have swore we had numbers for you last season. Or maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. All right. I don't know what I'm talking about because you would have been right there. All right. Well, if you're going to stick around for bingo, Elizabeth, we'll start that show at 6 o'clock. We always take that first 30 minutes of the Silver Stacker Bingo show to give out numbers to people who want numbers. So if you want to stick around and check back in after 6 o'clock to get numbers, you're more than welcome to do that. And then we actually start the actual bingo games at 6:30ish. So, all right. See, I thought you had numbers. See when you have 400 and where are we at? 422 bingo players. 422 bingo players. It can get a little daunting. Actually, 421 bingo players. It can get a little daunting. So, all right. Well, yeah. If you want numbers, just come. We'll get you some numbers at 6 o'clock. Just when we get that show going, just let us know that you want numbers. We'll get you numbers and we'll get you all set up there, Elizabeth. All right. Let's talk about stacking your preparedness. And again, we're going to talk about food this evening. Now, and it was nothing at any significant level of SHTF situation last evening. I lost power for about an hour and a half. Big whoop, right? But it did allow me to sit there in the quiet without anything running, anything playing, anything. I had my phones, but because everyone's internet was down, everyone was using their phone, which means the internet connection was really sucky during that 90-minute period. Couldn't really actually access the internet, but it did give me a chance to stop and think about stuff that we need to think about for being prepared for a situation. Again, 90 minutes, big whoop, but gave me a chance to stop and reflect. And case in point, apparently I need more uh, communication abilities because when I lost my internet connection, I couldn't use my phone because it was extremely slow. And depending on where you live, you may not have a decent phone service where you live at. So, you lose your internet service, you lose your means of communication. If your phone doesn't have a good signal or loses the service, what you going to do to stay informed? So that got me thinking about communications because I was trying to see what was going on with the weather and I couldn't. So in a situation like that, what would you have done in a long-term situation in regards to communication? This is what I have. I had to, I had to dig it out of my closet. I had to dig it out of my closet because it's not meant to be out in the open very often. But as you guys know, or I don't know if I've mentioned it to you or not before in the past, but I am actually a licensed amateur radio operator, better known as a ham operator. I have been for probably 30 years. And that allows me to have ability to communicate on various frequencies from your HF frequencies, which is your what's also known as shortwave, all the way out to well, gigahertz frequencies. And it was something I wanted to do way back in 30 plus years ago because I wanted to I mean, prior to becoming a ham operator, I was a CB operator, and I just mainly did it just to have a community, sort of like what we do here and on the internet with YouTube and the shows and stuff. And it was something I just wanted to be more part of in regards to being, a part of a community where we could communicate from back in the day with the CBs. We had a local group that was regulars, sort of like what we do here on the internet. We have regular people that come in on a regular basis to just talk about stuff. And the group of people that were on the radio were probably all within maybe 30 to 40 miles of one another. So nice little tight little small area right here around, well, not here, but up north. And so that's how I started my communication preparedness, and never really thought about it being a prep at the time. Hello, Stacy. Good to see you. And John Pierce, welcome. You're late, but you are here. Well, that's all right. I was running late too, John. Couple minutes here. But yeah, so yeah, I've always been in a communication mindset. And back then, like I said, I didn't think about having a CB radio back in the day was considered a prep. But, and for that matter, when I graduated, like I better word, graduated and became an amateur radio operator, I didn't think about being a ham was a prep, but it was actually something I enjoyed doing, so I just did it. And now it's like, well, I'll be damned, that's a prep. And I didn't think about it back then, 30 years ago, 35 years, 40 years ago, whatever, when I was into it a lot more. So yeah, that is definitely a prep. So what I have, and again, because I am a ham operator, I have what's known as a VHF UHF two-way radio. VHF, UHF two-way radio. Well, actually, this guy here is just a VHF radio. I don't have the UHF one. I traded that. But anyway, the UHF, the VHF radio operates in 144 megahertz range for communications. About the same range of frequencies as, say, your police, fire, ambulance services. Same range. Obviously, we wouldn't be using their frequencies to talk to our stuff, and they wouldn't be using our frequencies to talk about their stuff. It's separate, but it's in the same spectrum of frequencies. So this here will allow me to have communication with all other amateur radio operators. About 50 miles or so is the range of this guy on a good day. And because the fact that it is an amateur radio operator, it does have the ability to listen to other frequencies. Only listen, can't transmit, but you can listen to other frequencies like police, fire, ambulance. So this would be a great prep to have in case you need communication. Now, as I said, this is a receiver only when it comes to frequencies beyond the amateur radio space. But in a situation where, for example, you have an accident, and if this radio just happened to have the ability to transmit inside the police bands, I could legally go into a police band and ask for help. And you don't even have to be an amateur radio operator to ask for, in order to use that privilege, because in an emergency situation, it's, you're not going to get in trouble by the FCC if you ask for help because you're in an accident and you have this radio available. If you ask for help on a police band frequency, they're not going to come. The FCC police nor the regular law enforcement is going to come and arrest you because you used their no, because you used it in a genuine, authenticated emergency situation to where you needed help. In fact, this rail doesn't do it, but I know there are rails out there that are capable of being what's known as opened up to allow them to transmit into those frequencies. This one is not, and I don't recommend anyone do that because it is a modification to the radio, which is actually not proper unless you are licensed to have that such frequency. But it is also, there was a situation back in the day, many, many years ago, where Mrs. Who was in an accident and she called for help on a police frequency because the radio I had at that time was actually a police radio, because not only have I been an amateur radio operator for 30 plus years, I'm also, back then I was also an emergency medical technician. And I also worked for the sheriff's department, not as a law enforcement officer, but I did work as a dispatcher for the sheriff's department. And I was actually a emergency medical technician. So my radio that I had at that time was capable of transmitting on those frequencies for protecting the public at that time as being an EMT or as being a dispatcher. So anyway, my car at the time, she had an accident. She wasn't hurt or anything like that, but she had an accident. Back then there were no cell phones. It was a word by mouth, or you ran over to the phone booth, or you ran across to the gas station, you called for help. Well, back then, my radio had the abilities to communicate, so she called for help on the police frequencies, and they responded. Nothing ever came out of it. It was a proper use of the radio at that time. So, and the point why I mentioned that the legality of using radios improperly, and I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. If we are in a bad situation, SHTF or whatever, if it's a very large SHTF, you're not going to be, the FCC police is not going to be around to do anything about it. Plain and simple. For that matter, there's probably not going to be very many things around in regards to public service, period, in a very bad situation. So you could, because no one's going to notice, but it's also in a bad situation, it could be considered an emergency situation. You could easily, or use these forms of communications to get help or to communicate with people. If, for example, if we have a bad situation, an emergency arises, and someone who is not an amateur radio operator needs help, and they happen to have a vehicle that has a ham radio inside of it, they can, by law, without any repercussions whatsoever, use that radio to call for help. No one, especially within the amateur radio space, is going to give two shakes about you needing help in an emergency situation. In fact, we actually have groups of people within the space that are actually known as ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Services, to where they actually will be more or less portals of people sending communications to people here locally. Like, for example, in fact, I did it one time. Someone was, I think they were stationed somewhere in the Middle East or something like that. I can't remember all the details. It's been many years now. But anyway, someone was stationed in the Middle East, and they were trying to get communications to someone that was local in my hometown. And they had no way, the people that lived in my hometown didn't have a telephone, so they had no way to get a hold of these people. So as a service to the community, or service to everyone, the Amateur Radio Emergency Services actually became a relay to where that message that was written down by someone who's stationed somewhere, that message was relayed from one amateur radio operator to another, to another, to another, all the way to me. And I was able to take that message, which was provided with me the actual physical address, and I was able to take that message and deliver that message to the people that needed to have that communication. That is part of what we do as amateur radio operators. We do provide a service. I know, of course, this is a side tangent to prepping, but it is, if you think about it, though, if we have a bad situation, we're going to need forms of communication. I don't have it out with me right now, but I actually have a shortwave radio that allows me to listen to well, I wouldn't say unlimited, but a very large number of frequencies, all the way down to the very low in the spectrum of the radio frequencies, all the way up into the UHF frequencies, the 400 megahertz frequencies. That radio can be used to listen to anywhere. Anyone and everyone is entitled, I guess, lack of a better word, to listen to any frequency anywhere in the world. There's nothing stopping you from listening to any frequency anywhere in the world. And these frequencies, a lot of the lower band frequencies, will travel around the world. And that's how that one message that I delivered to someone in my old hometown, the frequency, the original location of the request came from someone overseas, and they got a hold of a ham who was using a shortwave or a HF radio, low frequency radio. And because it was a low frequency radio, that radio was able to go thousands of miles, literally thousands of miles, to the next ham operator, who then record the message and pass it on to the next ham, so on and so forth. But you are again, nothing's stopping you from listening to anything. It's the transmitting that you have to be mindful of. And again, in a bad situation, no one's going to be out there with the radio police ain't going to be out there to cause any issues. Again, there's not going to be any services like that to even worry about in a bad situation. So with that being said, a UHF or VHF radio like this guy right here, which I've had for, I don't know, probably 20 years. This radio right here will allow me to stay in communications with anyone within the amateur radio frequencies, within a 50-mile range. Yeah, about 50-mile range. I've been able to use this radio now. I don't want to get into that because it'll get a little confusing, but there are point-to-point locations known as repeaters, where I can transmit to a repeater, then the repeater can transmit out to a larger space, and my radio right here can actually be heard for a couple hundred miles. But that's beyond this here. Yeah, and I'll say John Pierce knows exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, in a bad situation, yeah, you're looking at no one's going to be around to worry about you using any frequency for an emergency. Um, so you're always hearing people talking about your family radio services, your FRS radios, your little two water handheld walkie talkies. They have about, I don't know, maybe a 3 mile range, something like that, depending on the terrain, about a 3 mile range. So yeah, you can do that for like your immediate family, but it's not, but unless they're opened up to able to be able to receive other frequencies, which I don't know if those type of rails exist or not when it comes to FRS. You're going to be limited to a very small range of channels to listen to, which isn't going to be very informative. When I'm talking communications, I'm talking about civil communications, which, even with today's internet and digital and satellites and all the technology that we have grown to appreciate and expect, in a bad situation, a two-way radio from you to me is going to be the difference between not being informed and being very well informed in a bad situation, to stay on top of situations, to stay on top of stuff. And this here doesn't require any repeaters or satellites or internet, or this guy transmits from the back of this radio to an antenna, and it gets broadcasted out, and people probably within a 30 or maybe 40 mile range can hear this radio. And if you go into different frequencies, you can travel further. Or if you go into higher frequencies, you will have less area of service, not even service, less area of coverage to where other people can hear you. So the lower the frequency you go, typically, the further you can communicate. So this is great for local stuff. And again, I can listen to police, fire, and ambulance if I need to. If I need anything more from a more regional, national, international level, then you have to start looking at getting receivers in order to hear that type of stuff. And that's actually a good segue. Pinball preparedness actually, was it pinball? No, it wasn't pinball. Shoot, I just saw a video a couple of nights ago. Someone talking about a shortwave radio, and it's a very compact radio. It's only about say 12 inches by, I don't know, 8 inches, and only about 6 inches tall. But it's a shortwave radio that can be used to hear frequencies from very, very low spectrum. Can't remember how far up it went now. But anyway, it can be heard. It can be used to be heard to hear frequencies globally, as well as local communication. I think it goes up into the actual air traffic control space. It might even go higher than that. I don't know for sure. But that's something to think about as a prep, is or to be able to stay informed. Because as they always say, knowledge is power. And if you are in the dark and you have no way to communicate beyond your neighbors, you're going to need something in order to stay informed, especially and for that case, that's more of the receiving information, not necessarily transmitting information, but receiving information using an old VHF radio like I have here, using a shortwave radio. You can go to, I don't know, I'm sure you can go anywhere at a local hardware or electronics store and probably pick up a small shortwave radio for $50. So it's not very expensive, and it will, again, it's one of those situations where you may not need it, but you'll be glad to have it, and or you'll be glad to have it when you need it, rather than have it or not have it and need it. See, I always get that all screwed up. But you know what I'm talking about. All right, so that was a quick side tangent. I meant to talk about food. You know what? I'm going to hold off on talking about food. Maybe I'll talk about that next week. That'll give me a chance to make sure that I'm able to use my dice cam with audio and possibly chat in order for me to be able to see the chat, to give me the opportunity to show you some essentials when it comes to food prep, as well as to give you a quick tour of my daughter's garden, but it's on my yard. But anyway, she's the green thumb. Give you a quick tour of the garden to show you what type of stuff that is essential. And let me ask you really quick here, quick question here. You guys put into the chat. What 3 foods are pretty much essential in order to have a healthy, fulfilling, nourishing meal? What 3 foods do you need in order to do that? Think about a bad situation. What is going to give you the most bang for your buck in regards to food? I can think of 3 things right off the top of my head. And I actually need to get started on one of them here within the next couple of weeks, because it's getting really close to plant time. Really close. Paula says corn, beans, and potatoes. Hello, Sterling. Good to see you. Pizza, Chinese food, potato chips. You'll be one of the ones, Hagar, that raids the shelves and hoards all this junk food. Twinkies, Snickers, and ice cream. The 3 things that I immediately come to mind when it comes to getting the most bang for your buck: rice, beans, potatoes. 3 things. Rice, beans, and potatoes is going to give you the most bang for your buck. They are the most fulfilling food that doesn't take a whole lot of preparation to eat. And yeah, not some people are going to be like, beans are gross. Well, when you're in a bad situation, your diet will change, guaranteed. When you have to eat, your diet will change. Potatoes are so nourishing, so fulfilling, and they provide carbohydrates and starch to keep your sugars up and going. Beans are packed with protein. Rice is just a great filler and has a good flavor. And pretty much any one of those 3 essentials, right off the top of my head, can be used in so many different ways to create other meals. Beans are nasty, but they're good for you. That's right, Sterling. But again, in a bad situation, your diet will change. Fish sticks. So yeah, there are some. What was the key word, the key phrase I used to say not too long ago? When it comes to, there was very specific foods out there that were absolutely packed with absolute essentials and vitamins and nutrients. I can't remember the name of it. It was a buzzword at the time, but basically they were, your beans, your potatoes, and your rice. Now, I can talk a little bit about tonight, but we won't get too heavy into it till next week. I have a store known as Rural Keen here, which is a regional farm implement store, and they had some samples. Well, not samples. They were a couple of $3-4. But anyway, these are every wise. or everyone, or ReadyWise. ReadyWise, 25-year shelf life foods. And they had these actually out loose. Normally, when you buy this type of product, it's usually in a 5-gallon container, bucket or whatever, and it's supposed to be like 3 months worth of food. But anyway, they opened up one of those buckets and they were selling these individually, I guess. So I grabbed these. I'm going to try these out and see how this is. This is a cheesy potato soup. Again, this is always freeze dried stuff that supposedly has still, maintains good flavor even after you rehydrate it. Don't know. I've never had it before, so I'm going to try this out. I also picked up, so we got this one here, but I also picked up another one there at the store known as, this is classic chicken noodle soup. And we all know chicken noodle soup's good for many things, including the soul, right? So classic chicken noodle soup is also, this is a freeze dry. And do they actually have a best used? Yeah. So they have and this is some legal mumble jumble, but they have here best used by December 1st, 2023. This one here doesn't have that on here at all, which is weird. So they have this best used day. Oh, there it is. Best used by best used by 9/11/2023. So even though they have these best used by dates, they're freeze dried, which means as long as they stay dry, as long as they stay cool, and as long as they stay sealed, they will last you 25 years. But yeah, I'm looking forward to eating these guys just to see how they taste, because some people say that some of the 25-year food doesn't taste as good as others. I've never had it, so we're going to try it out. So this is what I picked up at the Rural King, and like I said, these were like, I can't remember how much these were, probably $5 or $6 or something like that. I went to my local flea market last weekend. Went to the local flea market this past weekend, or last weekend. It's a hell or small. It's basically just a indoor yard sale place. I picked up, I don't know how I'll be able to see this or not. I picked up a whole bunch of freeze dry food. One of the vendor booths had this tucked away underneath one of their tables. This here is Mountain House. Mountain House free dries food. And this here in particular is beef teriyaki with rice. Now, it's 5.75 ounces, serves 2 people, or has 2 servings. And the reason why I pointed out the best used by date, best used by March 2018. That's what it says here. Best used by March 2018. It's freeze dried, just like the ReadyWise. It's freeze dried. So as long as it stays dry, as long as it stays cool, as long as it stays sealed, it will last 25 years. So the reason why I picked up all this whole tote of freeze dried food, if I can get into the camera, there it is, that whole tote. I picked that up $2. A $2 package. I looked up similar packages from Mountain House, about the same size and whatnot, $9. And that's actually a sales price. They were typically 10.99 or 11.99 or something like that. So I picked these up for $2. I picked up 34 bags, so $68 of food, which, could have easily turned into $680 worth of food or whatever. 10, well, it's $340 worth of food. So you'll find deals like at say your flea markets, your yard sales and stuff like that. Not necessarily yard sale, but definitely something like a flea market. Your prepping stores. You might find some deals at a prepping store. But I picked up that whole damn tote because I know that's going to give me something for 20. It may be like, 34 bags, 2 meals a day, or 2 servings in it per bag. It's going to give me about a month worth of work food, and it's if it's going to be for my whole family, it's going to give me probably about 2 or 3 weeks of food. But it's better than nothing. So I bet, and again, at $2 a bag, can't go wrong there. Knowing that the retail price for that same type of stuff now is anywhere from $10 to $12. Yeah, and that's something I actually need to start looking into there, Angie, is Mylar bags. I have rice and beans. I need the Mylar bags primarily for the beans because the rice, and I found another video a couple of days ago where if you have rice, because of the properties of rice, you can actually put rice into as something as simple as a 2 quart or yeah, 2 quart plastic bottle, seal it, and it will preserve because rice is a natural oxygen absorber. So it will actually absorb all the moisture out of the air inside that bottle, which will preserve that rice. Now, obviously, you'll want to fill that bottle up with as much rice as possible, so it doesn't have to work as hard to self preserve itself. But you can take and I actually seen videos where a bottle full of rice sealed, however long ago it was sealed, the bottle has actually caved in on itself because all that rice absorbed all the air and moisture inside that bottle. So sounds like when it comes to rice, all you need is something as simple as a self-sealing bottle or jar or something like that, and let the rice do its own natural thing of absorbing air and moisture out of the air inside that container. Now beings, I guess you can't necessarily do that with. I guess beings, you need something like a Mylar bag. And I actually need to start researching into Mylar bags because I do have several packages of beings I need to preserve. The bags that they come in at the store isn't going to give you a very long shelf life. So you need something uh, that will more sustain the beings besides that plastic bag that they come in. Yeah, mason jars. I was actually looking at mason jars at Menards today, just today. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I got home late because we went to go buy some gardening stuff. You know what? This thing just died. Maybe no one's coming in, so I don't need this right now. I'll take these off. Um, the jars are expensive. They're like I think we're like $16 for 12 jars or something like that, and I think they were quart jars, and I don't recall the jars being that expensive when I was growing up, but they are today. So, and yeah, they had quarts and half gallons, I believe, and of course the lids. Wasn't there a shortage of canning lids not too long ago? So that's something to think about um, if you're into using canning, canning whatever you want to preserve into jars, that's really considered a prep because if there was indeed a shortage of lids back just a few years ago, then you couldn't preserve your food. You don't want that food going to waste. But if you have no way to preserve it in a jar, what are you going to do? Yeah, the lids with the lids in the rings, there was a shortage. I thought there was, or for the last 2 years. Okay, see, I thought there was a shortage. I don't know how bad it is now, but I know there was talk about a shortage not too long ago. Probably a beer flu situation there. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, if you're into doing canning like that on a very large scale, you obviously need to keep your rings and your lids in stock as well as the jars, because you don't know when those supplies are going to be available to preserve your preserve your stuff. But yeah, I wanted to show that to you with the freeze dried food. Like then $2. I'm like $2. Hell yeah! And I grabbed that whole damn tote, and I know it's going to last well beyond 2018, which was the best use by date. As long as they stay sealed, they stay dry, and as long as they stay cool. All of which is perfect qualities in a basement. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to eating one of these guys, particularly this chicken noodle soup one. I'm really curious about how that's going to taste. But all that talk about having, and that's actually a good segue because yeah, we can talk about the pantry and all the stuff that's in the pantries. I have lots of canned stuff, and I have now started my active acquirement of 25-year food just to have it handy. But in a really bad situation, that pantry is scarce. It's only going to last for so long. Your freeze dried stuff, your 25-year food is only going to last for so long. So if we get into a bad situation, that bad of a situation, you've got to be more self-sufficient than having a pantry and having some free dried fruit. It's not going to last you more than I probably have about I probably have about 3 months of food in my pantry. And I still don't feel comfortable enough to say I'm ready for a bad situation, a 3 month bad situation. My goal is to have 3 months of food should we need it. And it's a living pantry. So we pull stuff out, we restock it. We pull stuff out, we restock it because that way it keeps it fresh. And so it is a living pantry, but it's something that if we need it, we're going to have it. But I'm only giving myself 3 months of time for that food to be available for me. In a really bad situation, I will be planting, I will be raising livestock in order to feed the family. That pantry is only meant as a halfway house, if you want to call it that, a stop point in order for you to immediately become self sufficient when the shelves are empty or when you can't get to the grocery store because of whatever situation's going on. So that is the immediate fulfillment of your food and your water is what's in the pantry, but it's not meant to be long lasting. Again, 3 months is about as far as I'm thinking. I figure if we are in a really bad situation, 3 months is probably going to be more than enough time to allow the craziness to subside, and maybe we'll start recovering by then. I don't know, but if you do a lot of research, and I have been doing a lot of watching on YouTube, and granted, that may not be the best source of information, but it does answer a lot of questions for me. In a really bad situation, we're not going to collapse in 3 months. We're not going to collapse in 30 days. We're going to collapse within 2 weeks. And a lot of people are saying we will see a major collapse. Some people will say a collapse will occur, the complete implosion of society can occur within 2 weeks, sometimes even a week and a half, if it's that bad of a situation. So the 3 months is going to be great, but I feel comfortable saying that 3 months will last or will give me what I need in a typical situation, but in a very bad situation, it may only last, a month and a half, month, something like that. But that gives me time to, in order for me to implement contingencies like raising that garden, raising that livestock, and start becoming more self-sufficient, like my parents did back in the day, like my grandparents did. I can remember distinctly my parents and grandparents canning, and I just never understood back then why. Now I do. 50 years later, now I understand why you have to stack your preparedness, because if something bad happened, and they did it back then, not only, and they probably didn't even consider that prepping. That was just them, storing food, because it was stuff that was, blood, sweat, and tears, and to grow and harvest and to preserve the food. Because, well, back then also you didn't have your conveniences of your Walmarts and your Krogers and your Myers and your other superstores, right? It was a lot more. You had to be more self-sufficient, and they never called it prepping. That was just a way of life back then, right? Well, now it's evolved to a point where our conveniences have made life simpler, yes, but, and I've mentioned this before, we have lost the art, we have lost the skill set of being self-sufficient. And some people are a lot more self-sufficient than others. Could I be fully self-sufficient? It would take time. All the more reason why I want to have essentials handy, just to give me that time to get to that point. But, just like every other prep out there, knowledge is power. You need to be informed. To do what you need to do to be self-sufficient, you've got to be educated. You've got to be skilled. But the other prep that you need is time. If something bad hits the fan tomorrow, you're not going to have time to start prepping then. You should have been doing it the day before that, or the year before that, or 5 years before that. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get started until 2 years ago when I came into this community. And I started my journey looking for ways to preserve my wealth, hence why I got into precious metals. But as I have mentioned before, in the last couple of months, I've came to the realization there's a lot more to stacking than just precious metals. And that is something that I am hoping that will be percolated and driven through, preached at to each and every one of you, that you need to be prepared. Because, yeah, you can go out there to the various internet sites and talk about how things are going on between us and China, and what the U.S. is doing. Supposedly, the current thing that's going on right now is the U.S. is removing their identification numbers and patterns and labels and stuff off of C-130s. Someone's saying that's a telltale sign that something bad's about ready to happen. But again, I'm no military expert, but supposing by us removing our identifications on the C-130s will allow us to perform services or operations without being identified. Whatever. But if a bad situation does occur, it's better to be ready months, years, if all possible, than not. And I have some catching up to do. That's why I'm giving myself a 1 or 3 month limit, because otherwise I'll break the bank if I don't set a budget. Which, again, you know what? That's another thing I always talk about when it comes to being prepared is, yeah, precious metals. I always say to everyone out there, you stack consistently, you stack um, within your budget, you stack slowly. You don't want to break the bank. You don't want to FOMO, fear of missing out, right? You want to be slow and meticulous, or more or less. You want to be consistent the best you can, and always stay within your budget. And that can be applied to precious metals. That can be applied to food, water, any prep that you need in order to have that self-sufficient factor in place You always want to do it slowly, consistently, but always within your budget, just so you don't break the bank. Because some people will do that, and it's bad. It's bad to rush at the last minute because everyone else is going to be rushing at the last minute. And of course, people that are, there's going to be people out there that will exploit that weakness, and they will jack up the prices because of the rush. And so you don't want to be in that rat race. You don't want to be in that rush in a bad situation because everyone else is going to be doing the exact same thing. That's when you see the riots. That's when you see the loitering. That's when you see all the crime. That's when you see what the media likes to show because it's good for their ratings. Sorry. A little bit political. Sorry about that. All right, let's get on out here. I'm going to get ready. I still, like I said earlier, I'm actually running a little late, so I need some time to finish getting everything set up down here for Silver Stacker Bingo, and we'll see you here in about an hour to get to play to see me play with my balls once again. Could a water filter or pitcher with a filter work in a pinch? It can, and it's a lot more. Yeah, it's a lot more affordable than Berkeley. Everyone talks about Berkeley, but that stuff is expensive. And I mentioned this last week or week before. I have a under sink kitchen filter system I just installed because I don't like the taste of the flavor of the water here. I did that several years ago, long before I started prepping, and now I'm glad I have it. So I just have to replace the cartridges every however many gallons it runs, and then keep some extras in case I need it for the long haul. But yeah, a water filter is tremendous. I was actually looking at a whole house water filter system. I think they go for about $1,000 depending on the size. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to put that much money into a whole house filter system when it comes to us drinking the water is the only thing I'm concerned about. Doing everything else in the house, like bathing and doing dishes and whatnot, I'm good with water that comes out of the tap. But when it comes to actually drinking the water, I'd rather run it through a filter. That's why I have that filter underneath or here in the basement here underneath the kitchen. Yeah, I gotta get some filters too. Yeah, but yeah, in a pinch, you can go out and they sell them at Walmart. They have pitchers with filters built into them. But the only problem with, and I'll leave it at this. The only problem with um, that type of good is you're going just like the pantry. You're going to be limited on the availability of replacement parts like filters. You're going to be limited. So one of those situations where if you need it in a pinch, it's great, and it's going to do what it needs to do, but you're limited on the resources in regards to the filters unless you have a full box of filters that will last you for a few years. You're going to be limited on the scarcity of the equipment, be it filters or inserts like a charcoal insert or whatever it is. So all right, let's go on out here. We will see you. Yeah, limited. Yep, that's actually true there as well, Elizabeth. If you're in an apartment, you have even more limited options because you can't you can't install a under sink filter when you don't own the property, which people do what they have to do to survive. But if you can't install a filter, then your option is using a tabletop pitcher with a filter on it, or that one time they actually had filters that you could screw onto the spigot or whatever you want to call the where the water comes out. They had those at one time. You might be able to get away with something like that in an apartment, but that's about as far as you can go in regards to filtering out your water. But yeah, you need to have a surplus of those type of supplies, filters or replacement cartridges or whatnot in order to be self-sufficient when it comes to purifying your water. All right, let's go on out here. I got to get things ready. We will see you here in about an hour for Silver Stacker Bingo. Thanks for coming by. Smash that thumb on the way out, folks. I would appreciate it. And we will see you here in about 55 minutes. See you in a bit. Just keep stacking.